Zia Yusuf, the Reform Party's chair, has stepped down and left the party. 11 months ago, I became chairman of Reform. I've worked full-time as a volunteer to take the party from 14 to 30%, quadrupled its membership, and delivered historical electoral results. I no longer believe working to get a Reform government elected is a good use of my time and hereby resign the office. So you heard there that Reform's performance has transformed in the last 11 months, leading, they're leading in multiple polls and winning hundreds of council seats. So why would he leave? Well, just days before, Reform's newest MP, Sarah Pochin, called for a burka ban in Parliament.
Sarah Pochin, yeah.
Given the Prime Minister's desire to strengthen strategic alignment with our European neighbours, will he, in the interests of public safety, follow the lead of France, Denmark, Belgium and others and ban the burqa?
Yeah. Prime Minister.
Can I welcome her to her place? But I'm not going to follow her down that line. But now she is here and safely in her place, perhaps she could tell her new party leader that his latest plan to bet £80 billion of unfunded tax cuts, with no idea how he's going to pay for it, is Liz Truss all over again. Although, considering I think she was a Conservative member when Liz Truss was leader, she probably won't.
He's not very good at that, is he? But anyway, this then sparked a row, as according to Yusuf, he had no idea this would be asked and claimed that this wasn't even party policy. Now, Katie Hopkins chimed in with a pretty disgusting tweet. Dear Zia Yusuf Mohammed, a Reform Party spokesperson says a burqa ban is not party policy. This you at work again, Mo? What next? Sarah Pochin threatened you in the office? Need to report her to the police. Burqa ban must be party policy. Zia responded by saying, well, nothing to do with me. I had no idea about the question, nor that it wasn't policy. Busy with other stuff. I do think it's dumb for a party to ask the PM if they would do something the party itself wouldn't do. I think it's clear what's going on here. Zia Yusuf, who is a Muslim, was involved with Reform for his own class interests. He's a wealthy businessman, and Reform was created to be puppets for billionaires and corporations. But what he didn't have in mind was the membership and the right-wing commentariat also want to push reactionary policies too, and that's why he's left. Now, interestingly, Farage went on TV and attacked the alt-right for Yusuf leaving.
On X in particular, it's full of vile trolls, particularly the alt-right types, who have been just outright horrific towards Zia, right from the very start.
Sarah, this exposes the splits within Reform. You've got people such as Sarah Pochin, Lee Anderson, and its membership who are reactionaries, and others who are only there to represent capital. Do you think this is a sign of things to come? There's no coherent policy. Do you think the party will fall under its own weights? And do you think this would, could even affect their election chances?
Yeah, absolutely. It's like you said, Zia Yusuf didn't join Reform to fight for working class interests. He is a wealthy businessman. He does represent his own class interests, and that for me kind of encapsulates it all. The Reform Party in and of itself is a perfect example of a party that's built off of grief and grievances rather than actually genuine political principles that they want to see legitimate and tangible change happen. I think what's happened, and I want to speak about Yusuf just really quickly, it's interesting because he represents a marginalised community but tries to emulate the majority by being a part of Reform. And I think him leaving shows that the Reform Party is so disjointed in many ways. I think he's underestimated the toxic forces that exist within the party, and that these populist projects inevitably unleash. And I know for a fact that if he stayed within that party, not that his reputation's already not ruined, I think it's ruined entirely, but being a part of a political movement that's not coherent at all in the slightest means that he has been part of a vehicle that was destined for disaster anyway. We do see Reform doing quite well in the polls, but I think with the removal of certain people from that party and the things that they're now saying, I think that they might, and maybe my prediction is entirely wrong because I tend to be wrong about a lot of things, I do think that this will hinder the way that they're situated within politics as a whole. I don't think that you can genuinely have people in parliament saying, yeah, let's ban the burqa. Like, I think that already puts the party on very, very shaky ground. The party's already on shaky ground, but then when you're saying very, very, very reactionary things, then I think that means that you're going to topple the party even more. But I think Farage, because you'd mentioned about the alt-right, but Farage attacking the alt-right, I think it's just pure damage control. I think he knows.
Well, I was actually going to ask you about that, because it is interesting. He's in that clip there. He publicly disowned the alt-right, and obviously that's going to upset his online supporters and his base. But in terms of trying to win an election, I mean, do you think this is smart of him?
No, I do personally, because he knows Reform is attracting voters who are really harmful. He knows that he's attracting voters who are extreme in nature. And that, I think, means that electorally, they might render themselves like in a really, really difficult position. But I think the bind is, if he reins them in, he risks losing that online base. I think we know for a fact that the right-wingers or alt-right exist online, and that kind of fuels Reform's momentum. Reform do well because they have so much dominance online. I mean, I don't want to give them credit, but social media for them booms. They do a fucking great job on there. And so if you've got the alt-right who fuel that base in the first place, then he's going to miss out on that. But if he doesn't, then I think the party becomes almost unpalatable to swing voters and major donors. So structurally, again, I think the party's on shaky ground. But if he's making those decisions, and I think he's going to put the party in a more legitimate position, but I think it will struggle to sustain itself.
I think that's what it is. I mean, they brought in Zia Yusuf to professionalise the party, right? And that's what they have become. Well, actually, I was sort of, right? And what I mean by that is getting 30% in the polls. Farage, in terms of rhetoric, trying to be more of a serious party.
Yeah.
And the whole calling for a burqa ban, that's so UKIP from like 10 years ago, and that doesn't scream like professional party, and I think that's what Farage is doing, right? I mean, obviously he's not ideologically opposed to that, but also I mean, I'm thinking, Zia, like, are you thick as well? Like,
He's thick.
I mean,
he's thick.
He wants a party that wants to look. He wants a party that represents capital. Reform do that, right? But is he not aware of all the reactionary and Islamophobic and racist policies or rhetoric that is attached to Reform? Did he not know about this? Did he only just wake up and realize, oh, now it affects me personally? Maybe that's what it was.
That's embarrassing, though. But sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. It's embarrassing to think, you know for a fact that you're in a party with Farage, who's literally built his career off of anti-immigrant, anti-Muslim sentiment. And now that he's disavowing this alt-right contingent of his following, I'm like, Yusuf, how did you not see this before? Like, how did you not see that this is what the party was basically built off of? I'm now seeing online Reform voters basically saying we need to make, Britain great again. And I'm thinking, what is this weird populist sentiment that's now coming into play? But yeah, I do think that Yusuf is thick. So it took for all of that for you to realise that, oh, the Reform Party doesn't like people like you. Like, come on.
I also think as well, though, he probably gave himself a level of tolerance where he thought, look, at the end of the day, what matters the most, and this is the same with everyone, essentially, is how much money I've got and whether this can make me more money and make me more powerful. And I will tolerate a certain amount of Islamophobia, bigotry, and xenophobia. And maybe this was like a step too far, which obviously says a lot about his character anyway. I mean, this is, him stepping down his chair isn't like, oh, wow, good for you. It's terrible because, like, you know what you're getting into. And I also suspect if it was xenophobia against any other community but not Muslims, he would have stuck with it. It's kind of like, what it really reminds me of is gay Republicans, and I mean politicians or someone who has a gay member of their family. Republicans are just completely homophobic, and you might see like every now and again where Republican comes out and says, actually, I'm in favor of a gay marriage because it turns out they had a brother, sister, daughter, or whoever comes out as gay, and it's like, yeah, okay, so you change it when it directly affects you, but that's it.
Yeah.
I mean,
I have a question for you, like, because in the Spectator, it said that they think that Yusuf's departure won't impact reform at all. Do you think that that is true? They confidently said that Yusuf's resignation won't harm reform for long, and they argued that the party's appeal wasn't about one man. But then in Yusuf's statement, he had literally said, well, I took reform from 14 to 30%. So he basically said that I think he said something about like it quadrupled or something. I can't remember what it is.
I don't think it's going to make much of a difference. And first of all, he's being a bit egotistical here when he says, I took the party from 14 to 30%. It wasn't him. I mean, he probably had a part of that, but let's be honest. Two things at play. One, obviously, trust in the government has gone down. And two, you got social media, which in terms of algorithms, love the right wing. I think, given Elon Musk's proximity to reform, we absolutely know they're pushing them out there. I mean, I know Rupert Lowe isn't in reform, but he was in reform. You can see that he literally makes money from his tweets, like thousands of pounds per month, right? Then you've got GB News, which is an entire media network which backs reform. So that has had far more to do with the rise in reform, which is why I don't think it's going to make much of a difference with Zia Yusuf going. What it could potentially damage them is, I don't know, like they're on around 30%. If there was an election held today, they wouldn't get 30%, but I could see them getting 25%, right? But there's probably a ceiling if they're just trying to appeal to the right wing, and that's it. I think Zia's inclusion in the party was, again, that sort of professionalism. And if they want to get 35%, 40%, they're going to have to expand even further. I don't expect reform to get that anywhere, because I don't think any political party in Britain can get 35%. Because people need to remember, right, reform aren't particularly popular. They're just as unpopular as any other party. If you're under first past the post, if you're polling at 25, 30%, that's not great. It's not a good thing. It's just that everyone else is equally as unpopular, and that's allowed reform to rise. So broadly, I don't think it makes a big difference. And I do think it will, unfortunately, rile up the online sphere, the really, really radical elements of reform, like the core membership and the activists. I mean, you're going to see far more Islamophobia being thrown at Zia Yusuf. And as much as I really don't like the guy, I don't think anyone should be facing that kind of abuse.
No, I don't think that's ever warranted. But I do think like this public falling out shines a light on reform's identity crisis.
Absolutely,
I think they do have an identity crisis. And it's like this big tent insurgent party caught in like these city backers and disaffected Tories with like talk of tax cuts and all this sort of stuff and tech innovation. But then I also look at them and I'm like, is this UKIP 2.0 like peddling this nativist culture and trying to invest in these culture wars, talking about burka bans? Like, I think trying to be both is just a recipe for a schism, and that worries me. But I think we've seen far-right populists, because I do think of UKIP quite considerably. Their revolving door leadership and the feuds once Brexit was actually achieved is one that I won't forget, because they imploded almost immediately after. And I think if Farage's reform, oscillates between not knowing or to its alt-right base and trying to sanitize its image, then I don't actually think that they present themselves as a serious party. Like, pick where you want to be. I mean, but I also know that this politics is a spectrum, but I think they've made it pretty apparent that your views are very anti-migrant, anti-Muslim, anti-this, anti-that. Let's be pro-Britishness, and a certain type of Britishness too. And now you want to like say, no, I want to now make us a little bit more palatable for the nation.
Support independent media, support social justice that's there on social media. Thank you. Turn left.